Hi everyone, this video is one section out of my next Skillshare class on botanical illustration. You can see the final result from this time lapse. So I've created 12 different kinds of florals and brought them together in a full pattern. This video covers every step that I took to create the very first element for this class. And throughout the class, I've done 12 different kinds of florals. If you're really interested, go ahead and click on the link below to join Skillshare for 2 months for free. The class is going to be released somewhere early January 2020. Without further ado, here's my first tutorial. Over here is my canvas that is 4,000 pixels by 3,000 pixels. In terms of my layer structure, I have a group of layers for the background and a color palette that I have imported. And if you want to use the same palette, you can grab it from our class resource area. I'll also make the background texture available for you to download. You know, sometimes it's just very intimidating to draw on the blank canvas. I totally get it. Yeah, if you want to grab them and insert it in your canvas, you're good to go. I've recorded both my hand motion as well as the screencast. So I'll be alternating these two throughout the class. I'll be using whichever I think that is most helpful for you as a student. But if you have any suggestions for future recording, please do let me know. Let's grab a brush to work with. It really comes down to your personal artistic preference. If you're really into watercolor, you might want to use a brush that mimics that look and feel. By default, the Procreate brush library has a really rich collection where you can choose from. And I really encourage you to pause the video and spend some time to test out different brushes. For this class, I'm going to use a group of dry marker brushes. I got those from Creative Market, which I can leave a link in the resource area. I really like them because the edges of my strokes are still really textured, but it's very solid in the middle. And the solid middle can give me a really good foundation to add any additional texture. If you want to tweak your brush, just go ahead and click on whatever brush you have chosen, and it will take you to the brush setting area. If this is the first time you have ever seen the interface, it's probably very overwhelming. There are so many options. As far as our class is concerned, I will just call your attention to stroke path, and the second option under that is called streamline. If I have to choose, I think this will be the one single important parameter under brush setting. Basically, if you turn a streamline level all the way up, you will discover your lines are more smooth and it seems like the brushes are more elastic and forgiving. So if you have a shaky hands like me sometimes, you will find it very helpful. On the flip side, if the streamline level is all the way down, you will find your lines are more true to your pencil movements. It really depends on what look and feel you're aiming for, and you can play with the streamline. But if you're new to Procreate, you have no idea what I've just said, don't worry, just pick a number and draw for a while and change the streamline level to something completely different, and it's very likely that your hand will be able to tell the difference. In this case, for this particular brush, I'm going to leave it around 70%. Now that you have your brush chosen, let's go back to our canvas. Just a fun fact, if you use your 3-finger to scrub your canvas, it will delete anything that is on the canvas. And it's a really nice and quick way to erase. Let's draw some leaves. This exercise is mostly for you to warm up your hand. We'll do some very simple motion just to slowly get our mind and our hand to get into art making. First, I want to lay down some very basic branches to build my leaves upon. There's nothing too special about it. I just want to vary my direction and size. So later, if I do decide to use them on a pattern, I have a good variety to choose from. Because we have 12 different types of florals, I'm gonna do 3 at the most for each kind. Now I want to create a separate layer for my leaves. The reason why I want my leaves to be on separate layer is because later if I do apply some kind of texture or effect, it will not affect the branches. I'm gonna go ahead and lay down some simple visual guides so that I know how far apart my leaves are gonna be. If you want to be super neat about your layering, you can go ahead and even set this visual guides on a separate layer so everything's so clean and it's very non-destructive, which means that if you change the property of one layer, it will not affect any other layers. It's always a good practice to have, I would say, have many layers as possible if you can afford. Sometimes if your canvas is too big, you can only have very limited small amount of layers. So that's a trade-off that you have to choose. So now let's have a new layer to draw our leaves. Let me just zoom in so you can see better. So I like to start from the very top. There's nothing super special about it, just make sure that you close your shape. I like to start from the very top so that I can see the connection points better. Think of any shape that you draw as a container. If the container has holes, it's gonna leak. So later, if you color everything, you drag and drop, you don't wanna color the whole canvas and you wanna target that specific shape. So making sure all the shapes are closed is important, which I'm sure I'll make mistakes later, but that's the ideal. I'm not looking at any specific reference for this shape, so I just want to wiggle my lines and go around and draw leaves so my hands are warmed up. I'm going to time lapse from here so you don't have to see me draw like 100 of them. Throughout the class, if you see things happen super fast, that's probably for the same reason. In reality, I'm not fast at all. This class took me days to plan and design and to get ready. What you see is only a very small percentage of edited work. I want to make sure my teaching is concise and to the point so you can follow along without all the gibberish. But I also want you to know the truth so that you're not discouraged about it. When it's 10 times as fast, it's easier to tell, but sometimes when it's like 2 times or 4 times as fast, you can't really tell if someone is just being very fast or it's been time-lapsed. If you ever have any thoughts about it, on my class, it's probably because it's time-lapsed. I do want to let you know one small trick that I did over here that's been time-lapsed. So I'm going to bring it back and show you. So basically this will let you separate your strokes and your fill. You set your stroke layer as a reference. Just tap on your thumbnail and then click on reference and then create a new layer and drag and drop the color. The fill will be on the new layer that you created above, but it will look to the outline layer below, which is the reference layer for the boundary of the drag and drop. This is great when you try to decide between, do I want the outline only or do I want it with fill together? At any point, if you want to see what exactly is on one single layer, you can just long press the visibility toggle. It will only show you that one layer. In this case, we can see we have all the leaves fill on that layer and the strokes are on the layer below. And you do want to uncheck the reference layer once you're done coloring so that the future layers are not confused. So now looking at our leaves, we have a pretty good foundation, at least for the shapes. And I'll teach you a few ways of adding texture to it. I'm gonna bring out my color palette layer just to check the visibility. And if I want to only see that layer only, I can long press the visibility toggle to temporarily hide everybody else. I can choose a color that works well with the blue, which is this lighter blue, which I think will be a little fun accent color on top of our leaves. So I'm just gonna create a new layer and hide my color palette and draw on top of the leaves that I have. I do have a shortcut in terms of color choosing that is using blending mode. Let me just 3-finger scrub to clear my layer. I will sample the same royal blue color. Instead of selecting a highlight color, I'm just gonna toggle between different blending mode to see what kind of effect I can get out of the same blue. Just to test it, I'm gonna select multiply as my blending mode and start drawing on my new layer. This is really great, especially if you want a color that works well in harmony with your existing color. I already really like this blue color, but this is not committing because I can just go back to my blending mode drop-down menu to see what else I can get without actually changing the color. And you can instantly preview the effect as I toggle between different choices. So screen is really nice because it usually gives you a pretty harmonious highlight. Color dodge is really awesome too. Just go through the list and see what you like the best. I think I'm gonna stay with this multiply. So I just went ahead and did the same thing for the rest of the leaves. In this example, my leaves are facing upward, which is not necessarily true in nature, but I don't want you to overthink too much on our first floral or greenery element. And just go ahead and do whatever wiggly lines your hands want to do and see where life takes you. Say that later you have changed your mind or your client has, and they want this angry red to be in the middle instead of blue. And here's how you can do it. First, I want to make sure my blending mode is normal. Now I have the exact red that I want to use. I want to do an auto lock. Basically, this means that you're going to lock the transparent pixels and only change the colors of the painted pixels. You can also do that by using 2 fingers to do a right swipe on the layer, and you will see this checkerboard background on that particular thumbnail. And you can also tap on the thumbnail and just make sure you check the alpha lock. As soon as you see the checkerboard pattern appear, you can tap on the thumbnail again and do fill layer. And this will color all the painted pixels to whatever active color you have. So I'm just gonna undo a few times to go back to my original multiply blending mode. With our highlight color actually being darker, I'm gonna choose a brighter color to add additional accent as a texture. And I also want to choose a brush that is very creamy and buttery. What I mean by that is that a brush that is very sensitive to pressure. As I'm drawing, I really try to vary the pressure of my hand so that I can bring out the thick and thin of this brush. Just like how real brush works, when you press it really hard, the line's gonna be thicker, and when you lift your hand, the lines are thinner. If you would like to customize how your pens react to pressure, you can go ahead and click on the wrench icon, and under Preference, you will see Pressure Curve. Go ahead and click it, and you should be able to adjust from there. If you're heavy-handed like me, you would probably enjoy having your curve bending down, and if you're light-handed, you might like having your curves bending up. Either way, I feel like it's better than having a straight line, the factory default. Any changes you made here are going to affect all the brushes that you have. Whoa, that's a lot of information. So I'm gonna be quiet for a while to give you some space and time to draw before we move on to the next. I'm pretty happy with what we have over here, but I still want to go over some blending options so that you can see what other possibilities that we have. Starting from Multiply, which is really nice. The first few options are usually darker. As you go down, it gets lighter, and the very last options are the darkest, I would say. I like this lighten. It gives this little pink highlight. And you can just scroll like I did over here, and you should be able to view everything on the fly. I think I'm gonna stick to linear burn because I like the intersection, how the intersection is like really dramatically darkened. I'm pretty happy about where we are, so let's move on to the next one. If you have any questions, if there's any gap that I didn't cover, please feel free to reach out to me via social media or on Skillshare. Again, if you're interested in growing your ability as an illustrator and designer, please go ahead and sign up for Skillshare classes. I already have 10 classes published, and I have so many planned ahead for this next year. I can't wait to see you.